In this video, we will talk about the Earth's natural satellite. You will learn that without it, life on our planet would be very different, if at all. I will tell you about the conspiracy theories surrounding the moon, and how in the future it might become a very important resource for all of humanity. But first, please subscribe to the channel and like it, because it helps me a lot to develop my channel. So these are 10 interesting facts about the moon. In this video, we will talk about the natural satellite of the Earth, the moon. At this point, there are several hypotheses about how it might have originated. The first hypothesis, called the capture hypothesis, suggests that the moon formed separately from the Earth elsewhere within our solar system. According to this hypothesis, the orbits of the moon and Earth crossed, and the Earth, being a larger celestial body, captured the moon, which became its satellite. Another hypothesis suggests that the moon and the Earth were formed together from a single giant dust cloud. The Earth began to form first, and then the moon. The next version is called the many moons hypothesis, according to which there were many small celestial bodies orbiting the Earth that eventually collided to form one large moon. All of these hypotheses have their advantages and disadvantages, and at the moment, most scientists are inclined to the model of the impact formation of the moon. According to this model, about 4.5 billion years ago, the young Earth collided with a Mars-sized protoplanet, which caused their nuclei to merge and eject large amounts of material into space. This material formed a ring around the Earth, which later formed the moon. This hypothesis is considered to be the main one, because it explains the known facts about the chemical composition of the moon and the Earth better than any other. The discovery of lunar soil brought back to Earth by American astronauts made it possible to conduct a more detailed study of its composition and to reconsider previous ideas about the formation of the moon. While science does not know the exact mechanism by which life appeared on Earth, it is certain that evolution led to the formation of humans and all other biological species. The moon played a significant role in this process. Its effect on the Earth stabilizes its axis of rotation and causes the tides. The tides, especially around the equator, created an ideal environment for various organisms to live in shallow waters. It is warm and full of light. One common hypothesis suggests that life originated in shallow bodies of water, such as puddles on the ocean or sea, which were filled with water by the tides. These puddles formed a concentrated solution of chemical elements known as the original broth. Without the moon, the tides would have been less strong but too frequent. Perhaps without the moon, life on Earth could not have arisen. The tides also played a key role in the transition of life from water to land and in further evolution. Living organisms did not come to land on their own, but were thrown onto land by the waves created by the moon. The moon also plays a crucial role in stabilizing the Earth's climate. It stabilizes the Earth's axis of rotation, which prevents frequent climate change. Without the moon, the tilt of the Earth's axis of rotation would change frequently, resulting in maximum climate instability. This, in turn, would have prevented the evolution of microorganisms into complex life forms. The absence of the moon would also affect the length of days and nights, as well as other aspects of life on Earth. Overall, the moon has a profound effect on organisms and their adaptation to their environment. Many biologists believe that life can arise only on an Earth-like planet and in the presence of the moon. Such planets near other stars in our galaxy are considered the most likely places for detecting extraterrestrial life. Our moon is a favorite topic for those who believe in conspiracy theories. There are many such theories, and I will tell you about the most popular ones that a huge number of people believe. Let's break down these theories. The strangest conspiracy theory about the moon is the belief that the moon is not actually a rocky satellite, but a giant spaceship built by an ancient, highly evolved civilization a billion years ago. Conspiracists claim that the moon is hollow, with sophisticated equipment inside, possibly including giant engines and light sources. They don't even believe that the moon reflects light from the sun, but claim that the moon emits its own cold light. There is also a conspiracy theory that the moon does not actually exist, but only a hologram projected into the sky. Conspiracy theorists use various videos of lunar images as proof of this theory. Some of these videos create a wave effect that is due to camera features, but conspiracy theorists argue that this is evidence that the moon is a hologram. They ignore the better videos without this effect, claiming it's all just computer graphics. Other conspiracy theorists believe that the Americans did not fly to the moon, but admit that the astronauts did go there. But they do not believe in the authenticity of photos and videos made by them. Allegedly, the Americans, when they came to the moon, found there such things that could not be shown to the general public. So they faked videos from the moon, just shooting them in the pavilions. And on the moon they found the ruins of an ancient, highly advanced civilization, or alien spacecrafts, the existence of which people can't know about. That's why NASA went for such a grand deception, continuing the theme of lunar conspiracy and conspiracy science. I'm sure that people who believe this also watch this video, and then they go to the comments and write that it's been proven and no one has flown to the moon. In this video, I am not going to talk about what specific arguments the proponents of this conspiracy theory make. I will also not refute all of these arguments because all of this was disproved a long time ago. The fact that the Americans flew to the moon is not in doubt by any serious scientist. That's a topic for another video. Now, I want to tell you how this conspiracy theory came about in the first place and who started it. The first person to speak loudly about the lunar conspiracy was American author Bill Kaysing. He worked for a company that manufactured the engines for the Saturn rockets, the same ones that sent the Apollo to the moon. He worked there before the Americans went to the moon. In 1976, 7 years after the flight, Bill Kaysing wrote a book called We Never Fled to the Moon, in which he described his conspiracy theory. He argued that it was all a hoax set up by the American government to prove its superiority over the Soviet Union, and that at that time, mankind simply did not have the technical capability to actually send people to the moon, much less bring them back. It is worth saying that his book did not yet contain all the arguments that conspiracy theorists usually bring up now, such as the wrong shadows in the video from the moon, the absence of stars in the sky, etc. The book, however, had some very strange details. Kaysing, for example, claimed that in the days when the moon mission was supposedly underway, the American Apollo 11 astronauts were actually in Las Vegas, relaxing with strippers, and even getting into a fight over a drunken girl. How he found this out? The book is silent. However, this book was the impetus for the development of this conspiracy theory. Other authors began to write on the subject as well, and a whole community of people emerged who built their writing or television careers on the lunar conspiracy. They came up with arguments for this theory that modern conspiracy theorists use. By the way, Bill Kaysing was a very prolific author. In addition to the book about the moon conspiracy, he wrote several other books. Then he wrote a book about sewing, about gardening, and even about how to survive on a very small amount per month. So he was a versatile man. By the way, Bill Kaysing claimed that Yuri Gagarin didn't fly into space either, and the whole thing was a grand hoax too. Many decades have passed since humans landed on the moon. It was one of the most important events in human history, watched by the whole world. But very soon, the world's interest in the moon completely disappeared. People stopped flying there, and the budgets for flights to the moon were cut repeatedly. For a long time, it was believed that there is nothing more to do on the moon. But it is possible that in the future, flights to the moon will be very profitable even financially. The fact is that on the surface of our natural satellite there is some very valuable substance called helium-3. This substance is in the lunar soil. It is deposited there due to such a phenomenon as the solar wind. The solar wind is a stream of particles that comes down from the sun. The moon has no atmosphere, so over billions of years of exposure to ordinary winds, large amounts of this matter have accumulated in the lunar soil. There is much less of this substance on Earth because of the Earth's atmosphere, and this substance can be used as the fuel of the future. If our science finds a way to create reactors for controlled nuclear fusion, that is, to recreate in a reactor the process that takes place inside stars and ensures their combustion and the release of huge amounts of light and energy, it will be a completely different principle than that used in modern nuclear power plants. In theory, controlled nuclear fusion could provide the entire planet with clean energy without any gas emissions or nuclear waste. Work on this technology has been going on for a long time. So, if such a reactor is invented, the best fuel for it will be the very helium-3. It is very expensive to launch anything into space from Earth, and it is even more expensive to launch cargoes from the surface of the moon to Earth. But helium-3, if reactors for its use are invented, would be so valuable that it would be economically feasible to mine it on the moon and send it back to Earth. 1 ton of the stuff could be worth billions of dollars. Therefore, it is quite possible that one day the moon will provide the whole Earth and its huge population with clean and safe energy instead of oil and gas. Did you know that you have the opportunity to buy a plot of land on the moon and receive a certificate confirming your ownership? However, it is worth noting right away that this certificate has no legal force and is just a piece of paper. The man who sells these certificates is called Dennis Hope. In 1980, he was out of work and barely making ends meet. He wondered how he could make money, and at one point he looked at the moon. He got the idea to research who formally owned the moon. As a result, he found only one document, the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, signed by dozens of countries, including the United States and the Soviet Union. The document states that no state has the right to establish sovereignty over the moon, but says nothing about the ability of individuals to do so. Dennis Hope believed the law allowed him to declare the moon and other planets of the solar system his property. He even sent notices to the United Nations about it, but the organization refused to recognize his right to own the moon. However, this no longer bothered Dennis, and he began to sell plots on the moon at fairly low prices. 1 acre, about 4,000 square meters of land on the moon, costs only $1.25, and quite a few people bought these plots. It is reported that in almost 40 years of such activity, he managed to earn about $20 million. Dennis gives his clients beautiful paper certificates, but as I said at the beginning, these certificates are not legally binding. However, in fact, ownership of the moon is becoming more and more relevant in the international community. Soon, the moon may become a target for commercial companies that want to mine resources or build lunar bases. There are many resources on the moon, such as the previously mentioned helium-3 isotope and water. Water on the moon is valuable because it avoids costly transportation from Earth and is mined locally, greatly reducing the cost of providing lunar bases. However, what would happen if the US and China, for example, wanted to mine resources from the same area of the moon? At the moment, there is a kind of legal vacuum in this area. There is no clear answer to this question, but most likely in such a case, the country or company that gets there first and has more technical and financial capabilities will get the right to mine resources in a certain area. The moon plays a major role in the life of various biological beings on Earth. To begin with, we would not exist without the moon, as I said earlier. Our satellite played a significant role in the evolution of humans and other biological species by stabilizing the Earth's rotational axis. There are many regions on our planet with a climate that is suitable for life, and this climate changes very slowly, allowing species to adapt and adjust to it. If the climate changed constantly and frequently, organisms would not have time to adapt and would die out. Thanks to the influence of the moon, the tides create the perfect environment for many species to live off the coast. Sea currents transport heat from the equator to the poles. The moon's direct influence on human behavior is limited. Although many people think so, this is actually not the case. However, many animals use the moon in their lives. Nocturnal animals such as bats, owls, and many insects are most active during the full moon because they get more light, making it easier for them to hunt. Some animals, especially marine species, synchronize their breeding cycles with lunar phases. For example, coral spawning is often timed to certain phases of the moon, which ensures that reproductive efforts are synchronized over large areas and maximizes the chances of successful fertilization. Many animal species would not be able to reproduce without the moon. Migratory birds and insects are also known to use the moon as a navigational aid during their long journeys. Some species navigate by the position of the moon in the sky. Some studies show that the lunar cycle can affect the circadian rhythm of some animals. Also, the lunar cycle can affect hormones, motility, and sleep patterns in some animal species. Although the extent of this influence is not yet fully understood, people used to actively use the moon to navigate the sea before the invention of GPS. I think many of you have heard that our moon moves away from the Earth by 3.8 centimeters every year. Why is it so accurate? The fact is that when the astronauts of the Apollo mission flew to the moon, they left special equipment there which, using a laser, allows us to measure the distance between the Earth and the moon with absolute precision. Thanks to this, we know that the moon is moving away. However, this distance is very insignificant by cosmic standards, and we are not in danger of losing the moon in the next billions of years. Previously, the moon was much closer to the Earth, and its gravitational influence on our planet was greater. Therefore, the tides were on a much larger scale. At high tide, water penetrated miles deep into the land, not as now a few hundred meters at best. Let's fantasize and imagine what happened to our modern Earth if the moon suddenly disappeared. If it was stolen by aliens, for example, science can clearly answer and model such a situation. If the moon were to disappear, numerous species living in shallow waters such as crabs, various mollusks, fish, corals, and algae would become extinct very quickly. This will happen because there will no longer be tides, which will disrupt all the processes that take place in the shallow waters. It will also affect those who live in deeper waters, since all of the ocean systems are connected, as I said before. Many animals rely on the moon while searching for a mating partner, so these animals will have a hard time, and they probably won't be able to reproduce anymore. Also, the weather on Earth will change a lot, and people will be affected. Ocean currents play a big role in shaping the Earth's climate. Without the moon, those currents will change a lot, and regions near the equator will become uninhabitable. They would turn into hot deserts, while the northern regions would become deserts but icy. Also, because of the absence of the moon, the axis of rotation of the Earth will change greatly. In the past, its tilt only changed by a few degrees, and this led to ice ages. If there is no moon, the tilt of the axis could change by more than 10 degrees, leading to absolutely catastrophic climate changes. So it's very good that we have the moon, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Otherwise, we will all die. Against the backdrop of the U.S. mission to the moon, many people completely forget about the Soviet lunar program. Yes, the Soviet Union could not land men on the moon, but the Soviet unmanned spacecraft that reached the moon was a very big scientific breakthrough and achievement. In the late 1950s, rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union intensified as the two superpowers vied for dominance in space exploration. The Soviet Union, eager to demonstrate its technological superiority, embarked on an ambitious lunar program that would revolutionize space travel and pave the way for further exploration of Earth's celestial neighbor. The Soviet lunar program began 3 years later than the U.S. program. Several design bureaus in the USSR were developing and competing with each other. Among them was the bureau of Sergei Korolev, who was the chief designer of the rocket on which Yuri Gagarin flew into space. The Soviet lunar program began with the Luna mission, a series of robotic probes sent to explore the moon between 1959 and 1976. The Luna probe managed to become the first vehicle to land on the moon, or rather, to fall on it. But this was already a great achievement. It also produced the first photographs of the backside of the moon. Also, as part of the same program, the Luna 16 probe was the first automatic vehicle that flew to the moon, collected lunar soil there, and brought it back to Earth. Although it happened after the Americans' flight to the moon, who also brought lunar soil to Earth, but did so to speak, manually. As for manned missions to the moon, the Soviet Union had two separate programs. The purpose of one was simply to fly around the moon without landing, and the purpose of the second was to actually land on the moon. But this could not be done due to the fact that there was a decree from the Flight Bureau to save on everything at all. Therefore, there simply were not enough resources to carry out this program. In addition, the various design bureaus competed with each other instead of working together. Also in 1966, Sergei Korolev, who was certainly very important to the Soviet space industry, died. In general, after the Americans landed on the moon twice, the Soviet lunar program was closed because there was no point anymore. After all, the moon landing was not primarily a scientific project, but a project for prestige. And it is also worth adding that it was the Soviet Union that managed to return the first living creatures from the orbit of the moon. These were the turtles which, 3 months before the Americans landed, circled the moon in a Soviet spacecraft and returned to Earth. There are also conspiracy theories that have not spared the Soviet lunar program. Some conspiracy theorists believe that the Soviets made attempts to land on the surface of the moon several times, but the cosmonauts died each time. And the Soviets, so as not to embarrass themselves, concealed this fact. There are also conspiracy theories that the Soviet Union did not fly to the moon, but was preparing to take fake videos and photos to pull off a grand hoax and deceive the world. Before the first space drones flew to the moon, scientists did not know exactly what the surface of the moon was. It was assumed that due to the lack of atmosphere, the moon was covered with a multi-meter or even a kilometer layer of dust. Therefore, there was doubt that the moon rover would be able to land and remain trapped in the dust, losing contact with Earth. There was also speculation that the ground on the moon was soft, which created problems for the landing and movement of the moon rover. Because of these doubts, scientists and designers did not have an accurate understanding of how to design moon rovers, and whether it was even possible to land them on the surface of the moon. At the dawn of the Soviet lunar space program, Sergei Korolev was actively working on the development of spacecraft to send lunar rovers to the moon and the lunar rovers themselves. After much debate with his colleagues about the nature of lunar soil, Korolev, with his authority, took responsibility for resolving the issue. He stated that the lunar soil is solid, and that the moon rovers should be designed with this fact in mind. As we know, he ended up being right, and the first rovers to land on the moon finally confirmed his assumption by clarifying the question of the presence of a thick layer of dust on the lunar surface. Today I have this question. How soon do you think people will fly to the moon again? And who will be first, the US or China? Write your answers in the comments. I'll read them. Also, they are very helpful in promoting videos. I suggest you also check out my other videos that YouTube algorithm recommends to you. Bye.